think we're good. So
Cool.
what's up, buddy?
How you doing?
So we're just gonna act like we are, so that we don't do like last time,
Yes, absolutely.
and we're gonna go from here. Um, what's up, y'all? Welcome to our second live show of the. You want to say season, don't you? But that's just not accurate.
No, I mean, I think we only anticipated doing one of these, but we're doing a little different now.
Yeah, I mean, the plan was always to do live up. Here's my way of thinking
Yeah,
about it,
yeah.
right? By the way, hello everybody. I'm just gonna do this one time. I'll try to do it more. We're good. Welcome all to the live stream. I'm Kiko.
Tim, I had the audio running for the
I could hear it.
yeah, so
You're like the dude who calls into the sports talk radio with his radio turned up.
100%. I was
It's
so
like,
prepared
I
to do
want to
every.
hear me.
Yeah, right.
Um. Anyways, Kiko here, Tim there, and welcome to the Arcane Oso live update, weekly live update, whatever we're gonna call it. So
Yep,
definitely weekly from now until relaunch on September 1st.
yep.
Um, and then we will see what the ongoing frequency will be. But to the point I was making before was it was definitely always my plan. I mean, every time Tim can make it, great. Hopefully, we'll get Joe on here for a couple. But he's got a crazy weekday schedule. I mean, not hopefully. I mean, we definitely will. But he's a real person. But um, the way I thought about it was ironic for a guy who writes for a living, amongst other things. But I'm not a big reader.
No, we established that long ago. If anybody ever goes and delves deep into our history and finds our podcast, we running bit is that we don't read things.
We don't read things. Here's the thing, dude. I love reading. It's
Yeah,
a twofold problem. Number one, it tends to put me to sleep, not
sure.
because it's just it relaxes me,
Yeah.
it calms me. Boom, I'm out, right? Number two is wait, what was number two? I am not a fast reader, right? I don't know if it's so I'm 100% dyslexic. I don't know if you could beat percentages, but I've got all the percentages. So since that's the one thing that we bothered to get diagnosed when I was a kid. The ADHD, we just let that
Yeah.
simmer and do what it did for
Yep.
42 years.
Yep.
So reading also just takes me a long time.
Yeah.
And, so I, especially when it comes to stuff that's important and stuff I really care about, dude, if someone's got a video, I'm here for it. I can do that while I'm doing the dishes, cooking dinner, whatever, right? And that's what we're trying to do is, nothing at the expense of the other.
Yeah.
So we'll be putting up updates. There's stuff on Instagram. There'll be stuff on the website. There'll be stuff wherever people want to find it. And then obviously, once the campaign page is back up, tons of updates. That'll be the primary hub for stuff regarding the project, obviously.
Yep.
But always, always, whatever frequency we decide, whether it's once a month, every other week, quarter, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, we're going to be doing all of our project updates through lives because we also just like talking about it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
giving
With
people the opportunity to ask questions in real time is just way too enticing for me.
yeah, and I think coming from our backgrounds too, like um, I do a lot of in my day job. I'm technically a database manager, but I do following updates on that stuff. Doing monthly updates when there are versions on the software that I run. Just I feel is really a transparency thing. But then we've also backed projects, right? Like we're asking you all to give us your money a year before we're going to deliver you this awesome product. And some of the best campaigns that I've been a part of have done updates along the way, answering questions, refining the details, taking input from the people who have put money forth, and asking about details and things like that, and crowdsourcing some thoughts. So I think that's important too. You're all going to trust us with your money, and we want to make sure that and see that we are working towards what we promise, because we want to deliver something awesome.
Totally. And just making sure that you have any and all options that we can possibly provide in which for you to consume that information.
Yeah.
If you're a reader and you just want to read the updates, boom, great. You want to watch these, you want to engage, you just want to watch on your own time.
Yep.
All of it will be there for you. So we're all about that transparency, and we are all about that convenience. So
Yep.
to that end,
Yeah.
let's get started. What are we talking about this week, Timba?
Oh yeah. We're gonna talk the overall theme here. We're gonna talk about art. We're gonna talk a little bit about where we stand right now, why a little recap of why we're pushing to September 1st and how the art kind of ties into that. But then we want to discuss kind of our big three, some of our big characters, the three that you expect and hope to be in this book. We've gotten questions about some of the design choices on some of those, and we
Mm-hmm.
thought it would just be kind of fun to kind of let you into mainly, Kiko said, and let you get a sense of where these designs came from, what we took, and how they ended up where they are on the digital page, if you will. Sort of the content. If you've been following any of our stuff, our artists are posting and will post videos of their process. A couple of them featuring some of our artwork. So if you want to take a look at that, but we're going to look at all those today and kind of give you a sense of what we are thinking and what you can expect with our book as we build out even more characters. And maybe if we have time, we'll give you a little tease of character we're going to spend tomorrow night's meeting working on behind the scenes, just to give you a thought of where our head's at.
Yeah, buddy. So, yeah, man, let's jump in. So, starting with the first thing, what happened and why we're here. We've
Yep.
talked about this, and it just feels appropriate as well to just sort of recap it here since it is so integral to the conversation of art, and there are going to be some changes, right? So, the
Mhm.
art we're looking at tonight is the original art that we created for our initial Kickstarter, which got flagged and showed some concern from the audience that it could be potentially AI.
Yep.
Admittedly, this is something that is hitting a lot of creatives, especially in this space and especially in this style, and definitely not something. It certainly surprised me a little bit,
Yep.
right? There's a lot we understood as creative professionals, and just decent human beings. I personally, I don't have I mean, I don't know. I don't need to make sweeping statements or declarations here, but what you want to use and do for your personal stuff,
Yeah.
your business, your prerogative, right? But in
Yep.
terms of when you are trying to sell a product, especially that, right? And it is so much more nuanced, complex. Like it's all the adjectives in one. This question of AI, and I understand that it's not a simple situation. But to me, it's definitely in this one area it is as simple as if you're looking to sell something, right? Like it better be stuff that people generated.
Yeah.
And if you are, especially just with how AI trains, taking inspiration. Now, you could argue it doesn't matter. I gotta stop myself there. But the point is, um, for me, AI is an absolute no-no when it comes to stuff that you want to sell
Yes.
commercially.
Yep.
And not to mention, as an artist, like it, it's just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something art-based, I'm using real artists, and we're gonna pay for real talent because the rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yes.
And so, it's in starting this, it's at the heart of Arcanoso, right? It's this
Yeah.
idea that I had, um, the that I wanted to bring people in who I knew had expertise and all this stuff, and that goes for the art as well. And it's let's see if we can build something together.
Yeah.
I will admit, I think that's probably what made it hurt so bad. When
Yeah.
all that gets questioned so aggressively, and you can't quite understand why. But lucky enough, I'm not too far removed from my professional life. I am the one person who does this full time,
Right.
um, for free for now. But um, from my personal days or from my professional days, I still have a lot of contacts. I still have a lot of people. So I was blessed enough to have great friends who reached out and were like, dude, I know what's going on. Hit me up. Um, and we had amazing people from the community reach out to us on social, reach out to us on Instagram, and was like, "Hey, I'm a senior art director, blah blah blah. I run this studio, I run that studio. I'd love to if you are interested." And that's the other, everyone's so polite,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yeah.
just like, "Dude, I don't want to step on toes. If you don't want me to talk to you about it, I don't have to," you know. And I was just like,
Yeah.
"Dude, we will take all the information we could possibly get."
Those are the best communities, when you find people who want everyone to succeed, and that are willing to share that expertise, because the more that we can put out in the world, it just makes the community better for everybody, right? Like, people are going to be playing this game for years to come. They've been playing it for years already, and the more product that is out there, the more people that can get involved, and it'll never be a shortage of content. And I think it's just so encouraging when people share that stuff and share their expertise and want you to succeed. This is not a competition. Like, this is just people creating stuff that they want other people to enjoy. So, uh,
Totally.
yeah.
So to that end, I'm gonna jump a little bit. I'm gonna pull up King Peter for a
Yeah,
second
sure. Sure.
because what I want to talk about before we get into the details about our top three NPCs here, species. You know, it's kind of a little bit everything.
Yep.
Um, I do want to kind of talk about what we did learn about our art style, but also to explain why we chose it.
Yeah.
Um, and more importantly, what's going to change moving forward because
Yeah.
there will be some changes.
Yep.
And so, kind of taking a look at King Peter, right? Here's two examples of our art style that we chose. Our incredible character concept artist pulled these together, Garov, and he's the best. You've seen some of his videos. You've seen
Yep.
videos of him creating these figures, you know, specifically, as well as Tinkerbell. And yeah, stuff we learned, right? Why is this flag? Backgrounds. We've got some generic-y backgrounds sort of blurred in the background. Why was that important? The backgrounds were sort of secondary to me. I knew I just wanted to pull the figures and put them on like white backgrounds or more simplified backgrounds. But we also wanted a quick option, and so we pulled these together because the backgrounds were just sort of loosely setting the scene.
Yep.
We wanted the focus to be on the characters. Apparently, that was mistake number one, right? That's a textbook thing that AI does. Let's keep in mind though, AI learned to do what AI does because of artists, real artists who do this for a living professionally, have mastered this style, and AI just took it and ran. So that's one of my biggest things that just
Yeah.
breaks my heart is just there are people who have dedicated years to mastering this look, and you know, in the span of a few months now it's an
Right.
unusable style like
And that's the
that's
other thing that we realized too, is that from most of the people we've talked to, is that if we had launched even 6 months ago, we might not be in this exact position, because AI kind of grew kind of out of sight, out of mind. And while we had these discussions in the beginning, um, it just kind of it got that good in 6 months.
well,
Is
and in addition to that is that people have become significantly better at prompting AI, and they're prompting it to create textbook classic imagery that is used in D&D books.
Yeah.
And so that's so reason number one why we chose this style is we were it's our first publication, it's our first at bat. We had ideas to use some more unique styles, but the concern was, you know, are we too new? Like, do we have to earn it a little bit? And
Yeah.
should we wade first in the waters of genre expectations
Correct.
and just meet the audience where they're comfortable without pushing that bound too far?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, and so that's reason number one why we chose this, and I stand behind that decision.
Yep.
Number two, we're writing a book, a horror book based on fairy tales and poems and legends. You know,
Yes.
I say fairy tales loosely, right? And so um, this art style to me and to us, I don't want to speak for all of us, but certainly to me, it just felt like it fit,
Yeah.
right? When we're talking about the when we're talking about, sort of, I don't know, just what you expect out of a fairy tale. I feel like, again, sort of circling back around, this is what you, in my eyes, would expect from
Right.
a D&D book.
Yep.
You know, sure, there's a lot of, extra highlighting and all that kind of stuff just to add further, you know, dynamism and some other elements to just sort of make these characters pop a bit. So what have we learned? We have learned those are all bad things to do. So so we have been
Everything you are doing is wrong.
it is. And while, it caused us a little bit of a hiccup, it's definitely something we can learn from. And the good news is something that we can adapt. Our artists are beyond like just masters of their craft. And
Yeah.
so it was one conversation with Catherine and Gaurav to say, hey, can we move to a more painterly style? Can we embrace more of the imperfection? Can we dial back the highlights and and really make sure that we have, you know, um, a specified light source, whether you can see it or not, that is, generating highlights you would expect, and to kind of speak towards the style of art that we were thinking about, a little bit more comic booky style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those, having like that bright key light type of a look in one area just makes everything look more intense
Yeah.
because you get those areas of deep shadow and you get those areas where you kind of lose the definition, right? Like, I don't care if we can't see, every chicken nugget rib muscle
Yeah.
on the right hand side of his body. It's like, let's do that in shadow and let's get more brushstrokes and make it look more organic and natural.
Sure.
And blessing in disguise, I feel like that will much more easily and naturally even bleed into our alternate art style, right? So we haven't shown it yet, and I don't want to spoil it, so we'll save it for the next launch.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have an alternate art style. So this will be the primary style, like full color,
Yes.
detail which you would expect, and then we'll have like an alternate creepy kind of a style, which will be a fun break in the book. Um, so moving forward, what are we gonna do? We're gonna move to that style. We are going to recreate King Peter, Tinkerbell, and maybe Hook, I
Mm-hmm.
think, but definitely like King Peter and Tinkerbell, and do them in the new style for the new campaign.
Yep.
Additionally, we're going to introduce some new art and some new characters,
Yep.
some more of our species. So we're going to do artwork for the Osoin,
Yep.
and which is a bear folk race in Finnmark Mountains. And we're gonna do some more items, some of
Yep.
our magical items. So Pan's crook, Pan's flutes, um, what's his name? Johnny Corkscrew is Smee's dagger, and Big
Yeah.
Tom is Captain Hook's giant cannon that sits at the front of his ship, and the Jolly Roger, and of course, the Neverland Compass. You saw a little bit of that in the past Kickstarter, but we'll do more of those elements and items so that you can just see more of that, which I'm super excited to do. I
Yep.
cannot wait. Right now, our artists are working to update the coloring of these figures,
Mm-hmm.
and we will use that and unveil that to unveil our new style. And but we're not going to repaint all of our past figures now. We will repaint all of them after the second launch.
Correct.
But leading up, we do want to focus on getting more assets. And, we've pulled this money together and we figure, sure, we could repaint all the characters you've already seen,
Yeah.
or we can repaint some of the key ones
Yep.
and give you more.
Yeah, more
But
characters, more world. We've got a couple of ideas to kind of flesh that out. In a future live, we plan to talk about the world. So hopefully by then we might have a little bit more to share about that. But we've got all these diverse regions, so we want to make sure that we show those, and we're excited to kind of see where those go. I think right now we have four in art.
six. Oh,
Six. Eh,
three. So three firmly created in landscape by Catherine, and an additional couple of scenes of like locations within those regions. So we
Yep.
have the Caracan village,
Right.
Keel Hall, Keel, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah,
Yep. Yep.
Keel Hall K,
Yep.
and then we have
Pan's
um,
throne room.
Pan's throne room and a few other additional like locations within those regions. But we are definitely going to illustrate the additional three. So we'll do the caverns,
Yep.
we'll do Sherwood Forest, and we'll do Finnmark Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. In addition to that, we also, in our previous Kickstarter, talked about our exclusive book covers. We have one. So the standard book cover will be the standard book cover across all products, all space and time. Then our campaign deluxe cover is a Kickstarter exclusive, or wherever we end up being. It'll be exclusive to people who pre-order the book. Um, those of you who do pre-order the book, of course, we're going to have a deluxe book, you know, in perpetuity. That will have a different cover design that will differ from the one that you get in the Kickstarter campaign or in the crowdfunding campaign.
Yep.
But that cover will be provided digitally to you as an 8 by 10 poster,
Yeah.
which is the same size that the artwork would be on the cover of the book.
Yep.
It's an 8 by 10 book. And so we're gonna, that was something we were gonna generate once the Kickstarter was going, and we would continue generating artwork and uploading it and updating and all that kind of stuff. Um, but we're gonna generate that now so that you guys can see that and know what your poster is gonna look like, and furthermore, what the future deluxe books will look like if
Yep.
you're interested.
Yep.
So needless to say, lots more art coming. And I mean, lots maybe a strong word. We can only afford so much because we pay real artists to do real art, and it costs real money. That
Yep.
and we're funding this, so
Yep.
we're going to do as much as we possibly can. The big question, right, is, well, what are we going to do with all the figures in the old style? To me, it feels too muddy, scary, and weird, and maybe like I don't know. Maybe you guys let us know. But to me, it feels like it's got to be all or nothing, right? We can't
Yes.
have a mix in there. So I think the new Kickstarter or the new campaign, Kickstarter is like, I don't know, it's like Kleenex means
Yes.
tissues and Pampers means diapers and Coke means all sodas. Like Kickstarter means crowdfunding, right?
Yep.
So um, the new crowdfunding campaign will have the new artwork style,
Yeah.
and because that's a no-brainer. Why would I put up the same style that got us in trouble, like with the audience, right?
All right.
So it'll have the new one. As as that effort moves forward and is successful, we will continue to update those past characters in addition to creating the new ones
Yep.
and uploading those into there so that you can see their new sort of
Yeah, for sure.
form.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm excited about it. Um, I think I think it's going to prove, like I said, to be a blessing in disguise,
For
and
sure.
I think it's just, yeah, I think it just makes sense.
I think so.
Anyways,
I
that's
think
all I gotta say.
it'll be great, and we're excited to kind of see where that takes us. But for now, we're going to talk about what we do have and talk about these ones that will make these edits too. But we thought it'd be cool to kind of go through these and give you a little bit of our thought process of how we ended up here. Again, these were real designs, so we saw these every step of the way, and had feelings and adjustments and coordinating that. The beautiful thing about this whole process too, and these community things, our artists are across the globe. Like I'm 20 miles from Frank, from Kiko down in Virginia, but we've got our artists that are global. And so this has all been, communicating in a way that is only possible in the internet age. And it's been super awesome. And so the review process has been really important in getting our thoughts concise and coherent, and arriving to these, what are currently final images, has been fun. So again, we just want to talk a little bit about these and give you an idea of what we're looking at for these top characters. So,
And like where the inspiration came
yeah.
from,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Cool.
So overall, what was our goal here? How did we? What was the goal with our characters when we because these are like the first three that we had Guarav create for us. So what were we going for?
Yeah, so certainly with the first two, I think the thing in terms of inspiration, right? What inspired the general looks of
Yep.
our key species? So for us, we're thinking today we're talking primarily about the pan, the hada, and the caracan, and looking at those three species um, through the lens of the biggest NPCs, right? So within those species, so we've
Yep.
got King Peter of the Pan,
Mm-hmm.
who is our version of Peter Pan. We have Tinkerbell, who's the Hada Domina, the queen bee, as it were, of the Hada, who is our fairy race
Yep.
and or species. We're 5.5e baby.
Lee.
And then Captain Hook, who is obviously the big name amongst the Caracan. The Caracan being our pirates.
Pirates. Yep.
Um, and so yeah, man. So generally speaking, the first goal was this is a horror book, right?
Yes.
And so wanting to pay homage to the the best of horror, right?
Yeah.
And through that, they're like the our favorite tropes, right? So you've got like your creature features, and you've got your gore and your slashers, and you've
And
got your zombies.
we're 80s kids, so
That's a fact, Jack.
we kind of hit that sweet spot in the middle of the horror boom, right? The practical effects, that's big for me. I love practical effects, and so that's kind of been at the heart of what we're doing here with the horror trope for sure.
100%. Yes, 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 yes. And so mission number one was how do we capture what makes horror great and what's the lens that we all really consume horror primarily is through film, right?
Yep.
So, and that's everyone's goal. How do you make D&D more cinematic? How do you make gameplay feel more immersive?
Yep.
And more importantly, right, how do we hit some of these um again, to use the fancy term of genre expectations. And so I wanted to embody some of those tropes into the creatures as best that I could without being like super obvious or heavy on the nose, right? And so we'll talk, especially with the Hada. We'll get into it a little bit more um, and discuss it there. But I think additionally, it was about achieving that goal without losing cohesion.
Sure.
And so how do we take some of my favorite horror movies, right? Some of them are kind of based loosely on true things, which I guess helps to ground it, right? But it's the best ones are always the ones where you're just like, wow, that guy. So I think about The Strangers. There's
Yeah.
nothing overly crazy about that movie. I mean, maybe that's a strong take. There's some crazy stuff. But what makes that movie hit the nerve for me is simply that sensation of like, holy crap, that could happen,
Yeah.
right? And so how do you do that with a fantasy book? So for me, it's all about taking these tropes and then applying them, whether it be visually or through background lore or whatever in our book to make it feel grounded
Yeah.
and more importantly, intentional.
Yeah.
Um, we've all played, off the shelf campaigns, and we've all done certain things in this game where, you get a great book and it's got great stuff. And I know, like, I feel like most DMs, that's probably goal number one, right? It's just give me cool stuff. I'll take care of the rest. And I appreciate that. We're going to give you cool stuff. As a writer, and the way I like to DM and the way I like to play, I want it to feel real and immersive as much as it can.
Mm.
And step number one for that is not just simply throwing like things into a bucket, shaking it up and being like, here you go, buddy, good luck.
For
No,
sure.
it's like, why does this look make sense for this creature beyond just hitting a certain note? And more importantly, how does that creature and that look make sense with this creature and its look because they interact and talk? And so trying to merge all that, and we'll get into a little bit of that here. But
Yeah.
but yeah, man. So those were. kind of like the North Stars, I would say,
Sure.
in terms of the decisions that we started to make,
Yeah.
that we'll talk about now.
And I think the other thing too, and another place I think we really had to keep it grounded too is um, whether or not we wanted to play into the expectations of the source material, right? Like, people, you say Peter Pan, and
Oh,
people have ideas, right? You expect Captain Hook, you expect Tinkerbell, right? Everyone has an image, and whether or not I was thinking about this the other day. The cover of your Peter Pan book is a silhouette, right? But do you not automatically, what color is Peter Pan to you? I mean, he is, in that cover, he's just a black silhouette, but your
mm,
mind automatically makes him green.
great. Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is. So, kind of playing with that idea too, right? Like what the audience expectation is for these characters, but also wanting to kind of push the boundaries on that. Again, it's horror, and this is a different kind of take on that.
Well, and that's what you would see in a weird way, though, right? Like, doesn't that just further meet expect? Because here's the thing:
Right?
you expect there to be a Peter Pan, and
Yes.
you expect there to be a Tinkerbell, and you expect there to be a Hook, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like all of our question would be, I'm super excited. These people should be in this.
Yeah. Right.
And what is your take on it?
Yeah.
Right. And so you don't want just another, right? If you want to watch Peter Pan, go watch Disney's Peter Pan. You want to
Yeah.
watch slightly older Peter Pan, go watch Hook. You
Yeah.
want to watch, right? Like there's a billion Peter Pan things that you can consume,
Yep.
a billion Robin Hood things. There's a billion
Yep.
fairy tale things. How are we different? And
Yeah.
so the way that we can do that, first and foremost, in a genre like this, tabletop RPGs, is through the art
Yeah.
and letting the art and the visuals just further define the lore and the narrative and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
Let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's pull up Peter again. Sweet,
Pull up Peter,
sweet Peter.
sweet, sweet, beautiful Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Here he is, King Peter of the Pan.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Do you just want me to jump in? You just want me
Yeah.
to go?
Let's
Bro,
do it.
I'll
Let's do
go.
it.
All
Yeah.
right. King Peter. Why does he look like this? Let's talk about the inspirations.
Yes.
It's obvious, right? So Peter Pan, though, he's got to be in the book.
Yes.
You know what he's like. Like a 11 to 12-year old kid. Maybe 10. But somewhere in that range, who is mischievous and immature and just quick to react
Yep.
without giving it a lot of thought. And you think of all these characterizations, and you're just like, oh, cool, that's great. Problem number one
Yep.
is
It's a day one problem.
day one problem is, do you want to punch a kid in the face? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe, and I hope you get checked out. But like, we want this game to be fun. We want this game to be enjoyable, and you got to imagine people are gonna have a hard time, smacking around a 12-year-old.
Yep.
So out the gate, we knew it had to be different, and he had to be a full-grown adult. Um, how do we do that without triggering other IP, right? And so that's the other thing in my head. So my master's degree is in producing film, television, and video. And for that purpose, studied a lot of copyright law and First Amendment law and all that good stuff. And so, great, we have an adult Peter, so does Hook. How do we make ours different? And that's where we turn into the actual folklore and the actual mythology of the Greek god Pan.
Yep.
And what's really cool about that mythology is that it not only helped to shape our Peter Pan, or our King Peter of the Pan, it also shaped a lot of the backstory and lore for the Pan as a species,
Yeah.
primarily in their religion. And
Yep.
so the as you start to kind of dive into that, he starts to take shape, right? So immediately, if we're talking about the Greek god Pan, he's a satyr, a
Mhm.
faun, a pan. Like, pick your name. I know there's subtle variances
He
and
has goat
differences. He's got goat legs. So, boom, out the gate. it's a whole race. We have goat-legged, satyr-like species,
Yep.
and Peter is now their king. Um, so then, how does that influence his general look? Well, we also have to think about where he lives.
Yes.
So he's in the Neverwood. We chose to make the Neverwood. We want to distinguish it from our other wooded regions, and
Mhm.
so it's more of like that rainforesty tropical jungle. For me, I'm from Puerto Rico. I grew up, going there quite a bit, and have traveled there with my wife and just a ton. And it is a it is a core memory of mine is driving through El Yunque, which is our rainforest, and just it's I don't know, it's just it's part of me. So when I pictured the Neverwood, I pictured him in there. So again, giving him those goat legs to traverse that terrain and do all that kind of stuff felt appropriate.
Yep.
Um, He's the god of mischief, Pan is, and so that very much suits. The other thing too is the god Pan was also the inspiration that J.M. Barrie used to create Peter Pan,
Yeah.
and so that's an easy translation as well. I'm trying to think before we get into like the specifics then of like his night mode and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I think the only other thing I'll mention, well, actually, let's just talk about his night mode, and then we can talk about the other influences
Sure.
that the mythology played into
Yeah.
our book.
Yeah.
Um, Peter was definitely a much more linear design for me.
Yeah.
Um, when I sat down, as I said, it's about solving, problem one and then moving down the list. And so in doing that here, right, it was very easy to think about King Peter in his natural like day mode state
Yep.
and to develop his look, right? So, the horns, again, I wanted them to have a dynamic change, and
Yeah.
so having them be more closer to the head
Yep.
and kind of serve and kind of, almost helmet like, but then for him kind of adding those offshoots for his crown and working that into the horn
Yeah.
was very appealing to me. And so the rest of his look was pretty organic.
Yep.
When we then thought about, okay, then what happens to him in that nightmarish transformation mode, that's when we start tapping more into the genre expectations of horror, right? And so here it's more of that creature feature kind of, he's kind of a combination, I would say, of like, creature feature in terms of like, when you've got like that massive beast kind of chasing you, right,
Sure.
through the
Yep.
jungle, through the woods, and it doesn't have to be something fantastic, right? It can be something like a movie like Backcountry, and you're running from a bear, or
Yeah.
it could even be not even a horror, but something like Heart of the Sea or something like that, where you've got this whale, right? Heart of the Sea is the inspiration for Moby Dick and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. And so, I thought about those kinds of stories of here's this beast, right, who will relentlessly hunt you through
Yeah.
these jungles. You don't know these jungles. He knows these
Yep.
jungles. And what would that look like?
Yep.
And then just taking everything he is in the day and amplifying it and bringing forth like that inner monster to become more of an outward representation, right? And so I think what's his face, what's his name, Rick, the guy who did American Werewolf in London, in
Uh,
Paris.
Baker,
Yes, right. So I think about, um I watched which one was first? Paris, right?
I believe
Or
so.
yeah, or London. I always forget. I
Yeah.
think Paris was first. When I think about watching American Werewolf in London or Paris, I don't know which one was first. The I will never forget his first transformation
Yeah.
when his feet like stretched and elongated and his skin tears and that wolf back starts to come out, and Peter is not that aggressively transformed, but it's definitely the inspiration behind, right? Those horns, painfully growing out,
Yep.
that sort of felt stuff peeling out as, right? I also thought about like Hulk, right? It's like, why
Yeah.
don't his pants tear? right? That fleshy, felty covering on his horns would tear as they grow.
Yep.
I wanted that hanging off. I just so the inspiration to kind of, dude, I'll go on and on.
Oh yeah. It's easy
The
to do.
ins the horror inspiration was definitely primarily that werewolf type,
Yep.
Rick Baker esque, just stretching, tearing, growing. And so that's what I wanted to capture in the pan.
Yeah.
So King Peter here representing it, he has the most aggressive transformation. They all will look like this,
Yep.
but he's the biggest, he's the baddest.
And
And
we
so
talked a little bit about it being painful too. Like
all of them are,
this is yeah, every transformation you see, like this isn't they might like the after effects and the results of these
right?
transformations, but it's not an easy process, right? And that's got to be evident in this. And even just going back to his day too, like we also wanted you to see what looks like a nice guy, right? Like if you ran into Day Peter, like you might think you're safe with this guy. He knows his way around. He looks pretty tough. And we really wanted to amp that juxtaposition too, that when things go night, they go hard, you know?
Well, and also too, right? Speaking to his other roots in terms of that childlike innocence.
Yeah.
How do you capture that in an adult king, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, so my sort of goal with his daytime look also was, you want him to be somewhat inviting,
Yeah.
right? He's a good looking guy, but he's kind of got like that smirk, and I wanted his eyes to be a little intense in the sense of like there is both a comfort and an unease in him,
Yeah.
right? In the same way of like Peter, it's like, yeah, he knows his way around, and as you read the book, you're like, he kind of helps and is helpful, but he also is sketchy,
Yeah.
and and people, Wendy figures it out fairly quickly, and John and Michael don't, because they sort of get swept up in the fuzziness of Neverland. But I wanted to capture that, right? I wanted it to feel like maybe I can trust this guy, but also I should maybe be wary of this guy.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
the DMs in your games will use King Peter is completely up to them. In
For
our
sure.
campaign, he's got he's got some layers.
Yeah. Ulterior motives.
Yeah, man. So yeah, so King Peter, his inspirations obviously the Greek god Pan. Um, of course, the book, right? Trying to capture some of the elements of that childlike Peter in our speech, in our NPC,
Yeah.
and then uh, and then in terms of the horror inspiration, definitely heavy, heavy, heavy on like the American Werewolf series and
Yeah.
the way that those transformations. And he was the first one, and that movie, like you were bringing up, that pain and stuff.
Yep.
That and that's why I said all of them, right? Like
Yeah.
once we came up with this, and this is the heart of the book. This is I mean, it's almost the namesake, right? It's
Yeah.
definitely the namesake of the original, of the source material book.
Yeah.
But there's no denying that Peter Pan is at the core of this story, and so therefore what we decided with him needed to resonate and translate through all of them, again, to sort of build upon that feeling of cohesion
Yeah.
and interconnectedness. So that painful transformation for him, we'll see how it impacts some of our other
Yeah.
NPCs.
For sure.
Oh, the last thing,
Yep.
inspiration, and maybe this is, I don't know, maybe someone will find it interesting. So the Pan, I have a lot of their religious stuff
Yeah. This is
um carved out. Yeah. So the Greek god Pan, right, was a multi-faced, multifaceted, whatever
mhm.
god.
Yep.
And I think three were like readily, like always sort of part of the pantheon that makes Pan.
Yeah.
Um sometimes it's sort of like differing sprites, sometimes it's different whatever, right? But in its core, it is that Pan is a complex god with various things. So the top three ones that I sort of read about were Nomios Pan,
Mhm.
Agrius Pan, and
Yep.
Phorbus Pan. And
Yep.
I think I'm remembering those right.
Yeah.
So Nomios Pan it was his shepherding side, right? So musical, nature loving, the god of the patron god of that, right?
Yes.
Um, Agrius, right, like aggressive, right? So Agrius was the hunter side of him. Um, and I'll get to that in 1 second. And then Phorbas was the frightening side of him, right? So Pan is where we get the word panic, and that was one of the powers of the Greek god Pan, was that he could induce panic in his enemies.
Yes.
And I was like,
Yep.
tell me more. So, obviously, our Pan will embody some of those traits.
Yes.
Um, we have, we have stat blocks. So the first thing we did was, in terms of religion, the Pan worship a twin god,
Hmm.
and the twins embody the two primary paths of the Pan.
Yep.
Path number one is the path of Nomios, and path number two is the path of Agrius. The general Pan sort of unilaterally embody the Phorbus
Yes.
sort of thing, in terms that they all have an ability that gives them some level of like inducing some kind of state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the higher level ones, they do slightly more, and the lower level ones slightly less.
For sure.
I'm trying to give a lot of info without Joe yelling
Yeah.
at me for giving away all the stuff. Um, and if you guys have a problem with how much or how little info you take it up with Joe. I'd tell you everything, but okay. So we have these two primary paths, and the path of Nomios are primarily the Pan that are shepherds, right?
Yes.
And so we call those the Pan Guardian. And
Yep.
the Guardian are, tasked with, caring for the Lost Boys, right? This new creature that King Peter has created. The Nomios also just sort of are the farmers and take care of the clans and the
Hmm.
Pan as a whole, for their specific clans. And that's the other thing with the Pan. There are multiple clans within, the general, familial clans, kind of like, like the Scots and stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in another life, I'm
Slightly,
Scottish.
they have slightly different leaf pattern kilts that they're wearing.
Yeah. Yeah, tartan leaves. So, yeah, exactly right, right? So there's all that. And then the path of Agrius are your warriors, right?
Yeah.
So those are the pan hunters. And the pan hunters are like the more militaristic and combat ready group of, stat block for, the pan.
Yeah.
Um, it is, you know, maybe obvious, I don't know, maybe not, that King Peter is the first king from the path of Agrius.
Yeah.
And so King Peter is a warrior king for the Pan,
Yep.
which is unique for that species and leads to some interesting stuff in our book and especially in our campaign.
Yep.
Um, and lots of intrigue and infighting and plotting because there's a little, oh man, like there's a little
Yeah.
thing that I don't want to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say, but
This
I
is a
won't do
whole
it.
a whole new world for the
Oh,
clans of the
no, don't
Pan.
do that. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, so the Greek mythology influenced that structure amongst our species,
Yep.
and from there, that's where, we start to define these stat blocks. We start to sort of define the roles and how the community looks and what and then through from there, what does the Neverwood look like?
Yeah.
Because now, here is this species that lives within there and shapes it to their purposes.
Yep.
And also, the parts they can't shape, they have to be adapted to. And so you can see that sort of two-way symbiotic way of it's really interesting when people ask about like where's the inspiration come from. It's like, well, the inspiration for what, right? Like it
Yeah.
all starts to bleed, and to me, that's when you're onto something and you're
Yeah.
actually writing something worth writing.
Yep.
Because for as much as the mythology shaped Pan, it also shaped them overall, which has then shaped the region.
Yep.
and the region has in turn shaped his appearance,
Yeah, sure.
and so there we go.
Yep.
Um,
And then you
yeah,
drop,
man.
you're gonna drop in, like, these outsiders like the Karakan, who haven't existed for very long in this world, at the time where the Pan are gonna have their first Agrius leader. And what does that mean? You're putting in these interlopers into an aggressive time period in this species, and watch it burn. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be super interesting. And I think that's a great segue then into Tinkerbell, because you're talking about how they fit in, right? Tinkerbell and Pan, they're one and the same. They're buddies. They're help. Like, in everything that you've seen, they go hand in hand. There is no Pan Peter without Tinkerbell. There is no Tinkerbell without Peter Pan. Um, so what did we do there?
Oh, boom. Meet our Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
So this is Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is the Hada Domina. She is
Yep.
the effectively the queen of the Hada. So yeah, inspirations. I was gonna say, I was like, I definitely wouldn't say they're one and the same, but
Yeah.
hand in hand for
Yeah.
sure. And yeah, inspirations. Hada, like I guess as you'll find with a lot of things, is pulled from the Spanish word for fairy, um, which in Spanish we would say hada, but the hada are our fairies,
Yep.
and she is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So Tinkerbell and the hada overall, their look and appearance was a little bit more like reverse engineered for
Sure.
me.
Yep.
Um, I had I had a few things that I knew. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. Okay, the number one key inspiration for the Hada is something. It's a movie that I absolutely love. I'm obsessed with. If Joe was here, I could ask him. Um, if he's watching, maybe he could drop a note. But I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say this is like a fave movie for the both of us at least. And I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I made you watch it and you liked it too.
Okay.
But the key inspiration for the Hada is Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So Pan's Labyrinth number one, obviously, again, a connection, right? And as you say, you cannot have one without the other. So Pan's Labyrinth is where I kind of pulled the our look for the fairy. In one of the opening scenes, if I'm remembering it correctly, and I could be wrong, and people can check me on this, but there is a scene when the girl meets a fairy for the first time.
Yeah.
And when the fairy flies in, it is an insect. It looks like a stick bug, right?
Yeah.
And it comes in and it terrifies the girl. And the girl shows it a picture from like a fairy tale book of what a fairy looks like. And it looks like a Tinkerbell. Like it's like a,
Yes.
almost, like cherub like, you know, humanoid figure with, the wings.
Yep.
And this bug then changes itself to look that way to not scare her,
Sure.
even though its motives are terrible, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that, when I started thinking about our fairies, it was all I could think about.
Yeah.
Because that scene, if I'm remembering that scene correctly, and I think I am, that scene has stuck with me.
I mean,
And
there's nothing scarier to kids than bugs. Like, I have made it a point with my child to not be afraid of, like, I've always assumed I have arachnophobia because spiders just freak me out. But as I have now been a dad, I have, learned to suck it up around smaller spiders, and bees. Like, I can
and B.
bees. Like, I can just, forever you want to run away from a bee, and now I'm just like, okay, I can freeze and I can let the bee do its thing and go away, because I didn't want to pass on that to her, right? Because inherently there's nothing, they're not malicious, they're not out to get you, right? Leave them, let them do their thing. But it doesn't matter. Kids are afraid of bugs. Bugs are inherently freaky. I mean, she panicked recently because there was a stink bug flying around her house, and I don't, or around her room, and I don't really care. I don't dispose of them. I let them do their thing, and they exist. But she would not go to sleep. She's like, I can hear it buzzing. I can hear it buzzing, and that is just inherently terrifying to children. No matter how much I've tried to downplay it, they are just terrified of bugs.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, my son is, I don't think he's ever been scared of a bug. That dude, he was one of those kids, right?
Yeah.
Like he'll just grab and touch everything.
Yep.
Um, my daughter is a little bit more creeped out, especially by certain bugs. And I get it, dude. They're shelly exoskeletons and the jointy legs and the quick movements, but the part you said where I was like, that is it's that buzz,
Yeah.
right? They make constant little sounds that just
Yep.
like,
Yep.
and if you think about it through a horror lens, right? Like the
Yeah.
that's like like you hear nothing, nothing, and then it's like as it gets
Uh,
closer, it gets
uh,
louder. Da
uh,
da da da. 100, like they are naturally little horror machines,
yep.
and so it
You
made
hear them before you ever see them.
yes. So it made perfect sense that Guillermo del Toro did that in Pan's Labyrinth. It stuck with me forever. When I thought about fairies for my book, I knew I wanted them to be insectoid because I also knew what I wanted Tinkerbell's motivations to be. And so this is where we start to get into I kind of backwards engineered her, right?
Yeah.
Reverse engineered. As I said, my master's is in producing film and television. I have done a lot of screenwriting for videos and things like that. Script writing, I guess. Screenwriting would be specifically for screenplay, although I've written some of those too.
Yep.
And a lot of times, certainly what works for me, and I feel like it probably works for about 90% of writers in that genre of writing, is, you want to think about your end. You need to know your end.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people will write to the end. For me, if I don't have the end, I don't have a script
Sure.
because I need to speak to that in the first 10%. Like I want to try to hint to that in the beginning, right? So that sort of working kind of backwards
Yep.
comes a little bit more naturally to me, I think. So, specifically to Tinkerbell, I knew I wanted her to be insectoid because of Pan's Labyrinth. It always stuck with me. I'm a huge Batman fan too. I know I have severe ADHD that has gone completely untreated my whole life because I only got diagnosed like a year ago. So bear with me. But I'm a huge Batman fan, and the number one thing about Batman, and especially for me, right? Someone who struggles with mental health issues and some other things, not issues, just struggles with mental health,
Yep.
and as we all do. Batman always spoke to me as a kid, like because I knew from the beginning Batman is his true form, and
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is his mask.
Yeah.
When I saw Pan's Labyrinth, to me, that bug was its true form, and then it put on a mask to make her feel comfortable.
Sure.
Tinkerbell's motivations are very deeply tied to the fact that fairies in Peter Pan, right, are born when a child laughs for the first time and die when that child stops believing in fairies.
Yep.
And so to have your life bound to something so far out of your control and
Yeah.
something so temporary as the duration of time where a child believes in magic, right? Um, felt sad to me.
Sure.
And so when that made me feel that way, I was like, well, that would make her feel that way, and it would make her frustrated, and it would make her angry.
Yeah.
And if she is the domina of this species, is there anything she wouldn't do? And if it's as much as making people believe that fairies exist, then wouldn't it be enough to simply make yourself known to the child? Like, if a child sees something, it'll know it's true.
Yep.
And so to that end, I'm like, great. Maybe Tinkerbell's motivation is I want my people to live and I want my people to have long lives and so we're going to go and show ourselves to children. But they look like bugs,
Yeah.
right? And then I thought, okay, well, in Pan's Labyrinth, she makes herself less intimidating. But what if, like Batman, what you see in the day that already scares you is as good as it gets?
Yeah. Yeah.
because the real Tinkerbell, potentially, right, arguably, or however you want to see it, right, is the night mode. And
Yeah.
to that end, right, by introducing children to fear, she introduces darkness to Neverland,
Yep.
and and thereby introduces some of these transformations and so on. Um, all of that fed into, the core of that sort
Yep.
of narrative for the Hada overall. From there, again, working backwards, I knew Insectoid, I had some motivation, I
Yep.
kind of understood how all that works in. And then my next thing was great. What's the horror thing that I want to kind of handle here? And all I could think was Predator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I knew she was going to be Insectoid, I just, that mandible split,
Yeah.
right? And so you can see that here.
Yep.
Like that is the grain that built on and then defined the whole look, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I wanted the giant mantis pincer arms
Oh
with
yeah.
spikes and just all this stuff. Now, you see all the glow, right? What
Hmm.
we know about fairies from the book Peter Pan is that anytime they are in motion, they glow. The only time they don't glow is when they stop.
Yeah.
So then to that point, and we've already talked about the Pan. So, things like you could expect with them, as I said, he is like the werewolfy,
Yep.
big, beefy, powerful warrior king, right? That's your typical, lots of bludgeoning, lots of melee, lots of, like ground and pound. He's got goat legs. You're going to get kicked, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of damage, that kind of interactions. With the fairies, they're beings of light,
Yeah.
and whether that light is, just standard or terrifying, that's what you can expect with them, right? So lots of radiant damage and things like that. And that's how, like, the book also influences and inspires the mechanics, right?
Yep.
So when Joe is then thinking, okay, what's going into the stat block? What kind of, abilities are they going to have? And then just at its core, what kind of damage does it deal?
Yeah.
Well, they light up. They're
Yep.
beings of light, radiance, right? So like, you can kind of see how those threads line up. That's pretty straightforward. So Pan's Labyrinth, the predator thing, then gave me the mandible thing I wanted, and
Yep.
then I sort of put everything else into place. From there, then it was really, I kind of built out the horror mode first,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I was like, whereas with Peter, I built Peter and then said, how do I grow him to creepy?
Yeah.
With Tinkerbell, it was like, here's creepy, and how do I make her
Yeah.
daytime, right?
Right.
And so scaling everything back, like maybe she loses a leg, and again, right, that painful, like she has a whole set of legs that rip out of her body. Her abdomen grows and
Yeah.
extends.
Sure.
Those arms and that mandible, that screaming, like, right,
Yeah.
like,
Again, the
give
painful
me that.
transformation. Yeah.
So we certainly did not invent the insectoid look for fairies, not by
Sure.
a mile.
Yeah.
It's also not super common, which is what appealed to me.
Yep.
Now insectoid wings, things like that, that has been the trope since, like Arthur Conan Doyle, right?
Yeah.
And I did dabble, right? Looking into fairy folklore and researching that. There was a long period of time. I don't know if you remember, right? So traditional fairies were much more like elves,
Yeah.
right? They were like beautiful, full-sized human, and sometimes even bigger than the average human.
Yeah.
And so they were much more like elfy and angelic almost in terms of their size and
Kind of,
appearance.
kind of like the elves in Lord of the Rings.
That's exactly right. So like the original folklore for fairies is that, and I feel like that got lost. So that was
Yeah.
very tempting for me. Was, hey, how do I keep this simple and just make them all big and whatever? Um, because it wasn't until like that Arthur Conan Doyle time, in like the late like 19th century or in like the early 19th century and stuff, where maybe even as early as the 18th century, but they shifted to the smaller fairies with the insectoid wings. Um, and that the insectoid wings were already kind of done because they knew, right, if they're big and they're beautiful we don't want them to have big bird wings and look like angels.
Right.
So we have to give them a different kind of wing. So I feel like going full insectoid, while not hyper common in the history of fairy lore, certainly not only builds upon like the horror tropes we want to make sure that we're playing on, you know, ensuring that we're staying, somewhat in the neighborhood of the book and the source material,
For sure.
but then also sort of taking that natural progression of fairies throughout folklore. Like, how do we just continue that progression in our story in a way that makes sense? And, so going full insectoid,
If you
just fit a bunch of stuff.
if you've never looked into the Cottingley fairies, I just looked it up because I was just double checking it. It's fascinating, right? These little girls who went out in the woods and you know came back to tell their parents, hey, we just spent the afternoon in the creek bed playing with these fairies. And they produced photos, and then Conan Doyle got involved, and he was kind of part of this, if I remember correctly, part of this society that wanted to disprove some of this stuff or prove, like, and like he got caught up in it too. Like, and these pictures are fascinating. For years they were hotly contested, and then eventually kind of the truth came out. But you've got little fairies, butterfly, moth wings,
Right.
super fascinating stuff. It's kind of one of those like OG cryptid, and I've got a soft spot for cryptid stuff with like Bigfoot and all that. And this is one of those first ones. It's like one of those introductory ones. And absolutely, I mean, this kind of captures that essence. But the other thing I'm sort of realizing here as we're talking about it, and kind of looking at this day mode, I realize her face really gives me that Charlotte's Web, the Charlotte Web of my youth, the cartoon that we used to rent from the library. Like, if you want to make a spider look
I
friendly,
didn't think about that.
right? But you see it now, right?
I do.
That you want to make a spider who, again, I was terrified of spiders, but she was the sweetest, nicest, friendliest spider you ever met. And you've got that look in the day mode here, and to juxtapose that with just the split mandible carnage is just, it's masterful, and it's beautiful, and I'm so excited for people to fight these things.
And there's so much to the lore of the Hada, right? Their birth, the birth laugh and their death cry and all this stuff like that I've built out. And
Yeah.
um yeah, dude, it's, I don't know. Yeah, for me anyway, it's like, if this showed up in the game, I would not be mad.
Yeah, it's it's
So,
it's awesome.
but
So
yeah, so that's the inspiration. There was primarily Guillermo del Toro, which
yep,
gave me the insectoid, then Predator for that gore creature again, like, and then she is much more on the gore side. So
yeah,
like,
yep.
she's also creature feature, but like heavy, heavy, heavy gore.
I was thinking about this today too. I think when in Hook, when Peter first meets Tinkerbell and he's unsure of what she is, and he refers to her, he goes, "Are you okay, little bug?" or something to that effect. Like, so just kind of playing into that as well, right? As an adult, you see this flying, glowing thing, and your idea is it's a bug, right? Like, if you see something buzzing and flying around your house, it's a bug. It's not a little tiny humanoid person.
And to that point, right? So Tinkerbell is tiny, and again, this would be something that Joe could correct me on. Um, So, because like I said, that was also a big temptation,
Yeah.
was making her more full size, like, medium size. And yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, Tiny can be up to 2 feet, right? So like the full grown Hada could be substantially large. Like, these
Yeah.
aren't going to be little, like, necessarily specks flying around, right? Like, they are formidable, and they can get large. But like with the pan, we'll have varying stat blocks and things like that, where we'll have, because they're insectoid, right? Their life cycle has sort of
Yep.
recognizable phases, and so there will be, phases of Hada at varying sizes and etc. Not all of them would interact necessarily like creatures. Some things might act like items, etc.
for sure.
more on that as we develop
And of
more.
course, there will be fairy dust, and we'll kind of save that maybe for a later live when we'll talk more specifically about items and that inspiration. But there will be fairy dust.
Nice. And it's not called. It has a different name,
Yes, it does.
but
Yes,
we'll
it does.
save that. Yeah.
Yeah. So then let's talk about Hook a little bit. Now this is good to
Oh,
be different.
Hook.
So Hook, as opposed to these characters, as I mentioned earlier, these guys are interlopers. They are not native Neverlandian species. So if you've been following us all along in our trailers, we talk about all native Neverlandian species have this day and night mode. They are affected by Neverland. The Karakan, the pirates, they are not. So they do not have a night mode. But our Hook might be a little different than what people would be expecting. So we kind of want to talk about kind of bring you into that one, and a little bit more personal relation to Frank or to Kiko to this to
Oh.
kind of so yeah, let's pull up Daddy Hook, as he's been affectionately called.
Yes, he's been affectionately dubbed Daddy Hook by some of our loyalist fans. The
Yep.
Here he is, Captain James Hook, or as he prefers to write it, Captain Jazz Hook.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so all right. Inspiration for Hook. Again, very lucky that he is well described in the book.
Yeah.
Like extremely well described, like to great detail. Um, and so I can pull it up. We'll take a look at that. But um he is the big the heavy amongst the Karakan.
Hmm.
Karakan is what we are calling our sort of species or variant of pirates.
Yep.
Um they so Karakan is, again, right? How do we think of a name, right, for pirate that
Yeah.
isn't pirate and isn't something else that has been
Buccaneer,
used?
swashbuckler, you
Right.
know.
So I went Caracan, and for me, um, that was, well, actually, I'll come back to the name.
Okay.
First, why does
Okay.
he look that way?
Yep.
Primarily, it's from the book. Let me read it to you.
Yep.
I have it here because I was like, maybe I'll do this, so I left it open, and you can see this is my see. I do real work. Okay. So actually, some of the characters I'm the most excited for people to meet are the other NPCs amongst the Caracan. Like,
Yeah.
dude, some of these names, these guys are so Italian Secco, uh, Bill Jukes, which yeah, I'm not calling him that. Um, and nope, not calling him that. I changed his name. So there's Cookson and Murphy, Gentleman Starkey, Skylights. And then
Ooh,
it makes a point. It's like, or his real name is Morgan Skylights. You're like, that's cool too.
sweet.
Um, and then obviously Smee will be
Yep.
in our book.
Yep.
Um, and a bunch of one guy is Noodler, whose hands are like backwards. This book is awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's awesome. Okay, Captain Hook. In the midst of them, the blackest and largest in that dark setting, reclined James Hook, or as he wrote himself, Jas Hook, of whom it was said he was the only man that the sea cook feared. He lay at his ease in a rough chariot drawn and propelled by his men. Instead of a right hand, he had an iron hook, with which ever and anon he encouraged them to increase their pace. As dogs this terrible man treated and addressed them, and as dogs they obeyed him. In person he was cadaverous and black-avised, and his hair was dressed in long curls which, at a little distance, looked like black candles, and gave singularly threatening expression to his handsome countenance. His eyes were of the blue of forget-me-not, and of profound melancholy, save when he was plunging his hook into you, at which time two red spots appeared in them, and it lit them up horribly. And more and more and more. So, a few things that stood out to me when I was reading that.
Yeah.
To me, in that book, and it's somewhat contested, although I feel like the vast majority of people feel like Captain Hook is kind of like Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian
Hmm.
descent,
Hmm.
but, just weathered by piracy and the sun,
Yep.
and kind of more like the Blackbeard looking
Sure.
pirate.
Yep.
When I
And
looked up, I had never, go
kind
ahead.
of old leather handbag look,
Yeah, yeah, like a Florida grandma.
yeah.
So, the the word I had never heard before was
Yeah.
blackavized.
Yeah.
And when I looked it up, it had two like primary meanings.
Yep.
And the first one was just a really crappy ancient way of saying black, like, of African descent.
Sure.
The other one was someone who was so like sun like beaten
Yep.
that their face was so dark as if it were someone like they had been blackavized.
Sure.
Um, that one felt gross to me.
Sure.
And so then in thinking about piracy, right?
Yep.
So piracy at its golden age, if you could call piracy a golden age, but in the heyday of piracy,
Yep.
right? It was primarily along the Spanish routes, right? And with the slave trade, rum running, and all of that. Um, so in my head, I was like, this would be interesting to take the description of the book, take some of the definitions and stuff that I had to look up, and I had to say to myself, well, what if Hook was African?
Yeah.
And at the very least, right, pirates among those lines and in that heyday would have been, you know, at that stage, had some ancestry or like connection to African heritage or at the
Yep.
very least like Caribbean heritage.
Sure.
And so to that end, the Caracan is a combination of Caribbean and African. Put together, you get Caracan. That is how I named them because the majority, it's a diverse group as most pirate ships were, and that's so. As I read about like the history and lore behind, not lore, but like I guess history
Sure.
of piracy, in its heyday, there were a lot of African and Caribbean pirates. Estimates are somewhere in like the neighborhood of 30% of all pirates were
Yeah.
African. What's especially interesting is regardless of whether or not you were an enslaved person at some point or not, if you found your way onto a ship, the ships were incredibly diverse, and as much as you can have equality in that type of a hierarchy, structure,
Yeah.
the everyone got the same splits and treatment because there was a there was just a general sense and understanding of like it takes all hands and all hands are equal.
Yeah.
Um, Piracy is certainly a terrible thing, but it's very interesting that so many of those like you know so many of those you know I don't know, healthier ways of thinking, like kind of were demonstrated amongst pirates, which
Yeah.
is I find very fascinating.
Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
so it felt to me like something that should be represented, and certainly when I read the words on the page, it seemed to me personally like, hey, this could be something that's been lost.
Yeah.
And to me, the Hook that is described is of African, at the very least, African Caribbean, but in my eyes, he's of African descent, gentleman first in terms of like how he likes to put himself out there, but
Yeah.
definitely a little bit black of heart and like will not hesitate to do what he needs to do. Um, I also, in reading about it, we live in Virginia. After living in Puerto Rico for a time, moved to Virginia, and Virginia's pretty much been home since I don't know, like since I'm like 6 or 7, right? So like it's um anyways, looking into the history, there was a very famous pirate, an African pirate named Black Caesar, who worked primarily in the Florida coasts and famously was on Blackbeard's crew.
Hmm.
He was actually, when Blackbeard was killed, he was the one tasked with scuttling the ship,
Yeah.
and was a very well respected among the crew of pirates. Pirate. Um, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, he ends up escaping and is captured on the coast of Virginia. And that's where I believe he faces trial and execution.
Yeah, I think so.
So having that tie to pirates here in Virginia seemed pretty cool. The fact that Black Caesar happened to be that pirate was additionally interesting to me.
Yep.
That title, that name ends up being applied to other pirates of African descent. Um, None, I don't think, as famous as the original.
Sure.
Um, so so all of that history, all of that lore, the description. When I hear curls like candles, to me, I kind of saw that more like dreads as
Sure.
opposed to like like what man especially has long like
Yeah.
real curls like you is he wearing curlers like
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
understand.
kind of the I think that was sort of the question that I always had about Disney's Captain Hook, and then which also carried through to Hook, right? And that wasn't even his real hair in Hook. It
At
was a wig.
least
That
at
was
least that was a wig. I can buy that. Like,
right.
sure.
You know.
Um, no, 100%. So again, right? To when I read the definition of the words, and when I see some of the other descriptions, that's how it reads to me. Now, eyes blue like forget me not, is that going to be incredibly common among someone of African descent? Probably not. That being said, you know, I am not African, but again, being Puerto Rican and having some of that ancestry and heritage in our mixed, blood, thanks to these pirates and
Yep.
their horrible atrocities against humans. They and these European traders, who not atrocities against them, but who conducted the atrocities.
Yes.
Um, I have, Taino blood, I have African blood, I have all this stuff, and that's what makes the Caribbean the Caribbean.
Yep.
It influences our music, it influences our food, it influences all
100%.
that good stuff, and all for the better. And so, to that end, um, blue eyes, my grandmother, who is fair skinned, has blue eyes. My grandfather has green eyes, or had green eyes. He's unfortunately no longer with us. He's also one of the craziest and funniest men I've ever known. I think my family's entire sense of humor comes from him. I think that's a lie though. My grandma's sneaky funny.
Yes, she is.
Um, but for some reason, as I pictured him and I pictured these pirates and I pictured this African Caribbean thing, I picture my grandfather. I picture his green eyes, these piercing like hazel green eyes,
Yeah.
um, and he's just he's the greatest storyteller I've ever known. And like I can tell stories the way I do because of the stories he told. And I mean, some would call them lies. I call them stories. The
A
so
little big fish scenario going on there.
100%. We used to joke about that all the time. We used to joke all the time when he died. We were like, wait for like all these people to show up and all this stuff. Like it's gonna be crazy. I knew your grandpa in the circus. Um, but it was just funny because he told such crazy stories. It's like, what if these turned out to be true?
Right.
Um, so when trying to come up with his look, I couldn't give him blue eyes. I don't know why it mattered to me, but Robin Hood is very clearly described as
Yes.
very blonde hair, blonde beard,
Yep.
bright blue eyes. And I was like, I want different eyes for Hook, so I gave him my grandpa's eyes and gave him a little bit of his, kind of look in this region here.
Yeah.
Um, but and by me, it's like I asked our artists to
Right.
do that. So the inspiration behind Hook and the Caracan, it's that mixing of cultures that would have been prevalent through the heyday of piracy. It's about, you know, um, you know, just paying some due to, a history amongst this kind of lore that is a little bit lost. I feel it sometimes. We all
Or,
think about the Blackbeards and such, but we don't think so much about the Black Caesars and the other pirates. To know that such a huge percentage of pirates would have been of African descent. Again, that's usually pretty lost. Although I will say in some stuff they do a pretty good job of showing some at least diverse crews.
yeah,
Like I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean did a
yeah, that's
decent
exactly
job.
what I was thinking. Yep,
Yep. So, building on that is, I liked the idea of having a powerful group of people who, just pay tribute to some of that stuff
for
and
sure.
some of that history and kind of, in some very small way shed a little bit of light on it. And I think at the very least, and I don't mean this to sound, crass or anything in any way, um, but all of that history really just did lend itself to a very interesting and, in my eyes, unique variant on this already deeply explored, sort of group of pirates,
For
right?
sure.
Throughout, TTRPGs in general. Um, I think we're handling a lot of the lore behind them in a really cool way. I mean, we could talk about, we have a bit of a curse. I mean, I don't want to say curse per se because it ain't quite like that, and it's
Yep,
definitely not piratesy of the Caribbean in that sense. But like, the Caracan will be a very clear window into some of the other genre expectations, or rather, not genre expectations, but like expectations you would have of Peter Pan the book,
yeah,
which is, never growing old,
yep,
never, those types of things. I feel like we've handled that in a unique and interesting way that feels narratively sound, um, and but different and unique. And so, the Caracan will be sort of the window to that, as you said, these outsiders who have come to Neverland. Hence why he does not have a nightmare mode. That
yep,
does not mean he is untouched by Neverland. And so
right.
we've got some really cool surprises in the stat blocks for the Caracan.
And
Um,
and I'll say they are fun to fight.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't fought them, but I have played them. They are fun to play. I will say that though.
There
I
you go.
will say like when DMing for me is it can sometimes be a bit of a mixed bag. I lean heavy um on the sort of story building and the character
Yeah,
development, right? And so
yep,
finding ways to take the player's actions, their backstories, weaving them into the story, um, you know, uh sometimes better than others. Um, and but when it comes to combat, sometimes it can feel, very formulaic. And I feel like we're trying something, especially with these Caracan, that is is I think a lot of fun.
yeah,
And I think it's gonna, in the same way that the nightmarish transformations can impact combat for the native Neverlandian species, and make that interesting and dynamic for players.
yep.
It also gives DMs, some cool, stuff to play with. But I feel like the Caracan, you know, I don't want to say they're like my favorite, but I feel like the way that they work is not only, like you said, in your experience, fun to fight against and play, but as a DM, it was super fun
Yeah,
to run because, like, anyways, they do some cool stuff. They do
yeah.
some cool stuff.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. So let's bring it home. I think this is fascinating. I hope everybody enjoyed a little peek behind the curtain. Like I teased earlier, we're going to be working on some new stuff tomorrow. Some other Neverlandian species that we hope to turn into some artwork as we lead up to this new relaunch. But kind of looking at some cool ideas that I'm stoked to kind of move into this again. These development process. Just sitting around throwing stuff, seeing what sticks. But we're gonna move into some of these native creatures that live in Neverland, and therefore gonna have a night mode. You can see what that looks like on some of these other characters, and again, the big thing is how they fit into these worlds, how they interact with each other. That's key to how we're creating this stuff. So we have an idea. We're gonna kind of shape that into something that would live directly with the pan and the hada, and we'll see where we go from there. But I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, that one's going to be fun. I think too with these moving forward, we're going to go, this one was kind of art specific because we got
Yep.
a lot of questions about the art,
Yep.
what inspired the looks, that kind of stuff. So we were like, let's hit on that
Yep.
because we're just also in this art mode right now
Yep.
in addressing some of those other things. So it felt, I don't know, it just felt right.
Yep.
I think the way to go though, moving forward, at least for now, would be
Yep.
like breaking it down maybe by regions,
Yeah.
right? So like, we have these six regions. The Pan are sort of the primary in the Neverwood, the Hada are the primary in the Never Plains. The Karakan kind of bridge both a little bit
Yep.
and have their own little settlement within those regions. So that's like more of a key location.
Yep.
And that's called Keel Hall K, and which has a fun. If you don't know what keel hauling is, that was an interesting thing to read about.
Yep.
Um, and then so our other regions, right? Finnmark Mountain, where the Snow Queen, and the Osoin are the caverns where Geppetto is,
Yep. Yep.
and Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood.
Yep.
And then the Serena in, oh, and we have artwork for that already, but
Yep.
um, the I think what we'd probably do is break it down region by region, talk a bit about lore, and
Yep.
then we can highlight some of those specific creatures and stuff that we have in there, which I think would be a lot of fun.
So hopefully then next week we're current plan is to give you a high level overview of some of these regions, what you can maybe expect design wise from there, and then as we get those continue to be fleshed out, then we'll delve a little bit deeper into more of what is going to be coming out of those regions. So stick with
And
us.
this, oh, sorry, buddy, go ahead.
Good. Good.
Yeah. And this is stuff that like we think you're interested in,
Yeah.
and they won't all be an hour and a half. We'll get it down. So
Yep.
like going region to region, I think we could be shorter.
Yeah, for sure.
But also too, like if there is something you want to know about, right? Like this whole live was based on a couple of questions that we got specifically about the Hada and their look, and then just generally starting to break down some of the looks of our creatures.
Yep.
So if there's stuff you want to hear about, you want us to break down, and you want us to discuss, just let us know, man. You can drop us a line on Instagram. We're at Arcanoso RPG
Yep.
across everything. So drop us a line there. You can hit us up on Facebook. Um, Email us. Whatever you got to do. But if you've got some questions and you want us to talk about it, we'll do a whole episode about
Heck yeah.
whatever y'all want to hear. So
Yep.
um, that's the whole reason we're doing this is to inform you. And so yeah, man, just keep letting us know. Otherwise, we'll just fill the space, man. We'll talk. We'll talk for
Heck yeah.
forever.
We're good at this. We do this anyway.
This is literally yes, yes. Dude, this was fun, man. I like
Yeah.
getting into more of the weeds.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I didn't divulge too much.
Nah,
Um,
it's perfect.
but yeah,
Sorry
man.
if we did, Joe.
Let's see. Yeah, man. That's it. That's all I
Love it.
got.
Love
I'm
it.
tired.
Love it.
I gotta go
Yep.
write more.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yep. Shoot us your questions. We'll be back next week, 8 o'clock, same time. Prepared to talk a little bit more about regions, and kick off from there. But yeah, hit us up. Let us know what else you want to hear. Joe's working on some cool stat block stuff. Obviously, we'll get into the nitty gritty with some of that stuff too. Definitely have
Oh,
Joe
and
on
sub.
for that. And
Yeah, we're working on
um,
subclasses too.
yeah, subclasses. Joe's doing some really cool stuff. I'm excited to see it, and I think y'all should be too. So, with that, we thank you. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your support. Keep an eye on us. We're doing good things. We are doing good things.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everybody. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah. Peace.
Deuces.